the facilities, and I'd come out into like the recreational room, and I would look at Liz, one of the nurses, and I'm like, okay, Gene's here, but he's not in his body, and this is really freaking me out. And now I'm starting to feel like a lot of people are not in their bodies, and I'm not doing drugs. Maybe I should do drugs, but it's like there's like a thing, this aura that when you come closer to the end of life, it's not contained anymore. It kind of floats around. And Liz's like, yeah, what are you telling me? It's like, why didn't you guys talk about this? Or like, what's there to talk about? It's just a fact. So that's how long I spent there at this point. Almost 5 years, 4.5 years. And another thing happened at this point as well. I remember coming up in the elevator, and I can't remember her name. I want Diane. Does that ring a bell? Diane was one of the nurses. Diane ring a bell? I think it's Diane. She wasn't there a lot. She was like a visiting nurse. But I'm in the elevator, and Diane looked over at me, and she's over there. Your father's been here a long time. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what a long time is. And she's like, well, I think that the average time expectancy in a nursing home is like 1.3 point something years. And your father's been here almost 5 years. And I'm like, oh. And she said, you know why your father's here? And I'm like, no, why? So his son can make great art. Yeah, that didn't help me much. That did not help me. Okay, here we go, November 10th. And I started seeing hallways and doors open and light. And I kept documenting them in these spaces. Now, you're seeing one photo, but with this big, huge camera at $8 a click, I probably have 3 images of this, slightly different angles. But, you know, I'm editing. We all artists edit our works. We paint out certain areas and put them back in. And film, you clip things and put them back to create the best. But this particular photo spoke to me best in this particular day. And I was really feeling more and more and more an urgency to photograph Dad. He was very much at a peace at this point. This is November 26th. There are photos in between, but I didn't want to spend 5 hours with you here, nor would you put up with it. But November 26th was the very first time that I couldn't look at Gene directly. And I was looking at Sedgwick's hair and how well it was combed. And that in its own right, the fact is that I couldn't look at Gene direct, was really saying something to me. And again, I couldn't quite put a finger on it, but there was something going on. And then, on December 4th, 2009, I don't know if anybody knows Greer Muldowney, but she's one of my all-time Pride students, who just was at the Craft Center yesterday as part of a panel. Greer became one of my rock star students, who is an amazing artist herself. And she came to document me photographing Dad. And we walked in on December 4th, and we found Gene in the one of the rooms down the hall. And he was behind this beach ball, the earth. And I looked at Greer and I said, oh my God, it's the Star Child in 2001. And I said to her, it's the end of life. This is it. It's over with. And it wasn't long after that, December 10th, that we lost him on December 11th. And this is the last photo, which brings us back to the very beginning that I made here of him in this bedroom. I didn't photograph on the 11th. Other people did. You made movies on the 11th. Frank Armstrong, a wonderful photographer, with his great Southern, I'm going to come photograph you on the final day, since you made 10,000 photos every other day. And you said you're not going to photograph. Well, we all know what the last day is all about. So the last day we just comforted him and we helped him go. We did an amazing job. And
the room smelled like burgers and fries.
Fries.
From Five Guys and burgers and fries.
Yeah. And you know, I'm going to hold on to this image instead of the other one. But the thing is that we didn't cry. Gina, I think you said you wanted to throw up at one point. But we didn't cry, and we were very.
You cried like 25 years before.
You did.
Well, there was an argument going on. I'm telling Dad to wait for Mom to land.
Okay, so you want the gory
telling him to
details?
go into the light.
Tell the gory details. So here we were told that he had renal failure. Oops, don't look at that. That he had the beginnings of renal failure. So we all arrived. That's I'm going to say Thursday night, right? That sounds about right. Thursday night, and that he's only got a couple weeks to live. And we called you up and get on the plane first, as quick as possible. And I came back Friday morning with my camera. And I took one look at it and I said, you are so out of here today. There's no way you're going to suffer anymore. And they had him on a morphine drip at this point. And I just was like, no, this is not going to happen. He's not going to wait around 2 weeks. So I called my brother and sister, and you guys are like, Mom's on her way. I'm like, I don't want him past 12. I don't want him here past 12 noon. And so, Gina, it took you to say to Dad, well, tell Mom you love her, but it's time to go. And he went like that. So a few more breaths and he was gone. And then the nurses came in. They cried because it was their child that left them. And you're right, on record, we have us talking about, because we had French fries and burgers, the smell in the room.
Yeah.
So now we go fast forward, and we have last photo of Rose in Florida, April 5th, 2018. And Chris is on the left-hand side there with the car door open, and Mom hugging neighbors of hers.
My sister.
Yeah, your sister. No, what was that guy's name on the right-hand side? Bob, that's right, Bob. And your sister, who you still in touch with. Not the last thing.
Bob was taking us to the airport.
Yep. And so I went down, my brother and I went down. See that pod on the right-hand side? You know those things? You ever fill one of those things up? Isn't that a lot of fun? So we have my entire mother's life belongings in that pod, and I couldn't pay anybody to bring it 12 miles out to see to sink it. Sorry. And I give you $5,000. Just take it 12 miles out. Just punch a hole in it. So anyway, you know, it's gonna go to Marlborough, Massachusetts. Oh my God! And my brother and I wrapped that sucker like down to like we couldn't get a feather in it.
Doing
We did. We love you dearly. And there was not a damn thing broke. Yes, there was. There was a microwave oven or something like that, or a construction area. Okay, you fixed it. So 100% of the stuff made it back to Marlborough. Redundancies times a trillion. So, all right, it's a color photo. At this point, it's very difficult to get an 8x10 camera on a plane at a moment's notice, and I'm setting flash bulbs and film get radiated, so I don't tend to travel with it much. But I started photographing Rose back in Marlborough, and I'm working on that now. I'm not photographing you till you die.
Oh,
I refuse to do that.
I hope I'm going to stick around a while.
Yeah. You're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, you're gonna be here for a while.
Yeah.
But I've been making these
Just to
magic,
solve that problem,
these.
Bill.
Matter of fact, well, I conclude this lecture once a week, but teaching gets in the way and life gets in the way. So every 2 weeks or so, I come and visit you with the 8x10 camera. And I remember, you know, we were about to go out to whatever, right? And I said, oh, Mom, just stay there. And I think you said, what is so interesting about a hallway? And I said, you know what? Sometimes art just happens. It just happens. And so I set up the camera, and you know, you're a rock. You can stay still for one Mississippi. She's very, very good about staying absolutely still. And can I tell you your age?
I said you'll make a
87.
model out of me.
Yeah, and here she's just looking back into her bedroom in a 1 second exposure with this light hitting her to make that photo. And here she is in the backyard showing off the black walnut tree, which you cut down some branches around in Christmas a couple months ago. But this was a tree just laden with just tons of walnuts, and the leaves of the branches were so weighted down that it came down to ground level. And here she is. And so these, I don't know what these mean. I don't know what they mean, and it's not foreboding. I wouldn't worry about it. I'm not picking any weird shit up. But there's something that I'm working out with my mother. I don't know. I'm sure I am. But the other thing is that unlike the photos of my father, you're not seeing film noir. You're not seeing anything spooky about them. If anything, ephemeral. You're seeing this kind of glow about these images. I'm shooting her with the big 8x10 camera, and those of you who are into photography, I'm using a telephoto lens on an 8x10 camera, which is impossible to use. But yet, she's so wonderful at staying still that I can focus within a quarter of an inch or something, and however, stay still to make these kinds of images. And so I'm showing you just a couple of them here today. Birthday parties still continue. So here's a birthday party this October. I'm cutting the cake. That's the same table that we saw Jean photograph back, you know, almost, in that case, 55 years ago.
With the missing eyebrows.
So the missing eyebrows, Chris, you're sitting, right where you was sitting before. And then this was shot like the 23rd of December, and we're all, you're not getting these, I'm sorry, you got 80% of the slide lecture because of the light in the room. But I just almost silhouetted us, but just a hint of seeing our faces. And I, you know, get all this, because I've been working with the same camera, the same film for decades and decades, that I have a huge amount of trust in my materials, and so I know how to tweak things to get exactly what I want. and it's framed, and Gina looking in the foreground back towards us, bringing us back into the frame. Chris sitting on the left-hand side. Rose, you always sat on the right-hand side. We're having soup. Soup is such a nourishment. It's such a earthy, heartfelt thing, a comfort food that we're serving here. And then I think I ended this. Yes, I do. So I'm ending with this, and then I have a few final notes and questions for all of you. So here I am coming up the stairway from our cellar where that bar is and the bomb shelter, and the same stairway that I'd come up all my childhood years, going downstairs to get wine to the table or whatever. And my father's photos of his 3 children are hanging in that hallway on the left-hand side. But it's also the same passage that I would listen to things that my parents said behind that wall. And this is a photo I made sometime in mid-fall with Gina on the left-hand side, and my mother and Donna and my brother-in-law. Funny thing, and by the way, on that wall in the kitchen, breakfast room, is something I made in art school with coloring paper. You know how your parents hang all your art shit up for the rest of your life, all right? For better or for worse. So, but you know, I have to direct these photos for them to work. So, you know, this is a long 1-second exposure. You don't see my hand squeezing the bulb. I opened up the outside door to get some light back into the hallway. I put a reflector on the floor, and I had to go back into the kitchen, or it's called the breakfast area, and the kitchen's behind them, and direct my mother to look at my sister, the body language of my sister, very open towards her mother. Donna, inquisitive on the right-hand side. My brother-in-law, very easy to direct. Stephen, don't move and look at your wife. But it was so funny because I had to do this 3 times. Because they all know that the camera opens and it goes click like that. And my mother kept saying, I'm gonna laugh, I'm gonna laugh, I'm gonna just look at Gina's earlobe. What? Look at Gina's earlobe. Don't look at her face, it's gonna make you laugh. Just look at her earlobe. Gina, just look at Donna's nose or something like that. And so, okay, we all have it, now I gotta put myself in a state of mind. And here we go, on the count of 3, a lot better than father looking in the mirror, not knowing himself, by the way. And I would hit the shutter, and while I was going, cool, and my mother would go,
At $8 a pop.
yeah, and then my wife would say, it didn't go well. It didn't go well. All right, we all motivation here. We have motivation to stay hell. No, Gina breaks me up. Look at her earlobe. Just look at her earlobe.
It was a good story.
It was a good story, yeah. And then I go back in. Here we go. 1 Mississippi. So finally, I get it in the 3rd shot, and I think that's it. So I think you looked at. I know you did 109. Yeah, exactly 109 photos. So okay. So conclude this, and then I'm open for really interesting. If you have great questions, ask me about this because I really need help right now. Is that I applied for a grant back in the fall. Called the Bob and Diane Fund, and it's a very specific grant for photographers, very specific, working on Alzheimer's. And I applied for it. I applied for it last year and I didn't get it. I didn't get it because I applied to actually create a website with all these stories. It says right in the friggin' application they want a book. So I'm like, well, I should give them what they want. So I applied for this book. You're gonna love this. I happen to have students coming all the way down from the New Hampshire Institute of Art to talk to me about grants and careers in the art. They're in my studio, and the phone rings, and it's the Bob and Diane Fund saying, congratulations, we're giving you this grant. And my students, and these students are like, oh, this happens every day. But I was actually talking to the head of National Geographic. I was talking to the head photo editor for the Washington Post, and head of Getty, and Diane Martin, who runs the foundation for the Bob and Diane Fund. Not Diane, Gina. Gina Martin is her name. Diane is her mother. And they're like, oh, Mr. DiRado, we looked at hundreds of applicants, and you always made us cry. And I'm like, you're going to make me cry. Like, I've only cried like 2 or 3 times in my life, and you're making me cry. And they're like, we looked at thousands and hundreds of thousands, but there was something about the depth of your work and the soul of it that we just don't see. So I gave you a little incision of that today, and I hope that came across. I really do.
Oh, yeah.
So this is going to be a book, a real book. And so I got, the university honored me with another $5,000. I don't even know how much money I honestly have to raise. It might work out that this is travel money to go down to DC and do a few other little things. I might get a local publisher. I'm not even going to jinx all this. That might work with me. And I might be working with a corporation, the Coalition to Transform Age Care. is very interested. Oh, just to back up, when I got this grant, I've never had so much publicity in my life. It was like, this is, I got a Guggenheim, I got a Guggenheim. So it's like $50,000, right? Nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared. It was like, okay, yeah, he's another one of those elite artists. So I had all this money, but nobody, other than the fact I have recommendations all the time. So if you need a recommendation, come see me, because I got a Guggenheim. But again, that's what it gets you, and to buy a lot of film. So I get this $5,000 grant. I've never had, I'm in the Washington Post, like 3 pages. There's Harold out there. Harold always does this right when I finish. So Harold is one of my dear friends and one of my great subjects. You always do this. I just finished all the picture part. We'll have to start all over again. So, rewind. But you found the place, Harold. So I was in National Public Radio. I did an interview on the radio. They did a hard text thing. So if you Google all this stuff, you get this, these great stories from those people. I was in this week, last week, Memory Well. If you're a Facebook person, Ann, you and I, your work and Linda, both of you guys are photographing nature, doing great stuff. So I'm always in touch with you. You're in touch with me. So all this stuff, week after week and after week, it's just not stopping. All these articles coming out. The time seems right. Nobody looked at this work 9 years ago. People looked at it and they cried and they walked away. But right now, everybody wants to look at this work. And so something's in the air. I don't know. I said earlier that I'm sanitizing this work because it's 9 years now. And I just think that something is going on for this to happen. You guys, what are you going to tell me? You hated this shit, right? But anything you want to say about it? Any input into it? Hey, did it work with family photos at the beginning? Did that help you get into this work? Or I'll even pass this around. This is a book I made 9 years ago, all right? I put it to rest. I even made a nice little slip cover for it, all right? But it opens not with photos of the family. Well, it does. It actually opens with a faded image of my father. I don't know if you can see that. And then we go into a passport photo of him. This is just handmade, printed on a computer, an inkjet on a computer, and then hand-stitched and glued together. You can do this. And then we go, remember that with the funeral photo of the family? And then basically all of the images you saw, and then some, throughout this whole book, ending with also that last photo that you saw, that last day before his death. And I have a few words. I think some of the family photos need to go in here. And I think, and I know, that it needs to end with Rose around the house. The same house that this started with and end with. I don't want it to be sentimental, but I also don't want to horrify you, and that life continues on.
It does.
It just continues on. It just moves forward.
It's hard, but you
So
do it.
you can pass that around. Anybody wants
I
to see
think you
that?
could create a link to a person who doesn't have Alzheimer's
Mm-hmm.
to know more that, when you see the family photos in the beginning, Gene was just like me, happy, healthy,
Yes.
cool as hell.
Right.
And you create much more of a contrast
Yep.
by showing the healthy
Yeah.
than the
So
unhealthy.
empathize. That we can all, right? I think
Yeah.
empathize with
And it makes it more personal because of the background of the family.
Yeah.
You know,
I didn't
relationship.
even know that until these slides were pulled out of the attic a couple of months ago. And, when you don't know what you are until you research the era that you grew up in and you look around you and I'm like, yeah, I'm part of the nuclear family. Oh, I guess I really, you read about this stuff and you're like, of course we are. Everything, the idealism, everything that we grew up with is very specified to the 60s and early 70s, the way you dressed and the way you lived and, the movies that we grew up with. And that all is tailored for the outcome in many ways.
I just wanted to add that the times that we're all in right now, politically, that everybody's thinking about caring for other people.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
My son asked me when he was little, he's 29 now, but he said, Mom, when you were little, did they have the color pink?
Oh, wow.
And I said, not on TV they didn't,
Wow.
And the fact that this is in black and white, a lot of
Yeah.
people my age are starting to come to grips with the whole aging thing.
Yeah.
And it's, healthcare is a big issue right now,
Yeah,
and
huge.
everybody's thinking, when I'm in this situation, if I'm in this situation, how am I going to be treated? And a central theme with you, particularly in the nursing home, is caring. And I'd like to see more of your words in the book
Yeah, that I can do. You saw me do this today.
Yeah, cause
and
that's what
yeah.
brought me here today, cause
Yeah.
I've met you and I know you enough that I knew it was gonna be very interesting. I knew it wasn't gonna be maudlin or sentimental because I know you. So, putting the words in, I
Yeah.
think the black and white was really important.
Yeah.
I think all of the pictures that you didn't put in is very important.
Yeah.
The editing that you did.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
Took me
It was
a whole week.
striking. Yeah.
60 hours to work on this, at
Yeah.
least, by the way.
Because
Yeah.
I've seen books in that sort of venue, and you kind of get lost in sadness,
Yeah,
whereas here I did not. It
Thank
was-
you.
Yeah.
That's huge. Thank you
good.
so much, yeah. You know, I every step of the, just my process with everything is like, best possible story, empathize. Relate to it, make it universal. Very, very, very important. It's so easy for us as artists to just go off in a mannered way. You dig so deep into the hole, 3 people are going to follow you out of 30,000. And, as a storyteller, I don't do as well with words. This was kind of okay. When I transcribe it, it comes off, it works better as a journal. I think some of these little words, and that's why I'm thinking of is fracturing it this way. If this were, who knows what's going to work out, but this one corporation, they're connected to celebrities all over the world, and I said, you get the rock star to write the introduction, keep my book intact, print 12,000 copies. It doesn't have to be in the best paper. Today was not the best screening. Just get the message across, and then I'll write an afterwards, which might be journals. Pieces, Diane in the elevator, my dear father's here. I mean, you all went, like this. Yeah.
Yeah, and the part where you, about the nursing home, because I worked at a nursing home, and they do become part of your family as
Yeah.
well. There's something that you take home with them all the time.
Yep.
You take them home with you,
Yep.
and you love them. So making that part of the story, because you don't see that part of them, but
No,
making
no.
that part of the story is very important, because they're now part of their family as well. So
Yeah.
the beginning part it's part of this nucleus family, but he became such a part of a bigger family.
He really did.
And it was so important
Yeah,
to
and
do that.
you're my hero. Gordon, you did this for years. You're my hero. In sense of care. So any other nurse? Carol, where are you? So she's here. Good. You're a nurse. You're not a nurse anymore, though, are you?
No, I just finally retired.
Congratulations. So, healthcare, you're above me on. Was going back to school, and boy, did I learn. And, I walked in there, and, I don't know if you experienced this, because I was there a lot, right, going into the week. But some of those Wednesday evenings, that was one of my blocked-in times, Wednesday evenings, that I'd get there around 6:30 and stay there around 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30. And I can't tell you how many times I walked in there, and then one of the nurses was literally cradling one of the residents. And I'm like, oh, she's dying. And I just wanted to make her last hours on this earth wonderful. And very private, incredible moment. Just right in the corner of the room for the rest of the evening while I photographed Jean. It was just part of life, right? It's just part of life. And something that we're horrified by, because we're all supposed to be young forever and, hide our wrinkles and not get sick. And, that's boring in the sense that, no, we're flesh and blood. We're on the surface of this earth for a brief period of time. It's funny, I've been thinking about, our father-in-law, Donna's father, lived to be 104. But it was such a short, fiery life because he was such a character. He really was. And he was going to make it to 105 if he didn't get stomach flu. And then he was out of here because he didn't want to convalesce in a nursing home. I'm not going to go to a nursing home. When he was in an assisted living, I love this. These are side stories about aging and centurions. Is that he was in a hospital at 101 or 102 because of passing out a lot. And so I walk in, Joel is his name, and I say, Joel, how you doing? He says, oh, I got the coolest nurses. They're really cute. And all of a sudden, all the monitors started beeping, and the nurses come running in, and his blood pressure just when he's talking about some men that just never let go. Never let go. And then when he was in assisted living at the Christian House? Christopher House, because anybody knows of Worcester. So I walk in, he's got the low efficiency apartment, and Joel, how you doing? He says, there's a lot of 70-year-olds in here. I might marry one or two of them. And I'm like, let me do the math. They're like 30 years younger than you. Shame on you, right? So that you die for that stuff. You know, he started drinking cheap whiskey because he said, I don't have the taste buds for the good stuff. Don't waste your money. Getting cheap shit. So, you know, I mean, it's really, and it's a fact that we're on this earth longer and longer and longer. You know, how many friends of ours have had cancer that should have been dead, or would be dead 20 years ago, that just keep going and going and going and living quality lives. Yeah, and you know, again, full circle back to seeing my father, not only just my father, but that whole experience in a nursing home, like I said, was my education. When he died, I was relieved for him. I was leaving the family, and I had no more excuses to go. Nor could I probably even legally go, to be honest with you, because couldn't hide behind my father to look around the room anymore. And it's a very difficult thing, as anybody working in journalism, it's very difficult to get permission, more now than ever before. The whole world changed after 9/11 for so many reasons. There's so many reasons about privacy and about individual rights. Your question?
What did it feel like for you when you were getting to the end, that this wouldn't be a job anymore?
Yeah.
You wouldn't be going here on Wednesdays and other days?
Yeah.
What was it like for you?
Well, I knew it was coming because of the urgency of God. So I knew that it was a finite period, make as many photos as possible, make the best possible narratives, and there's never enough narrative to make them better. Artists, we never get there. That's why we do what we do, because we never make anything perfect. If we did math, it's not going to happen with art. So when the urgency to make more and more and more, and knowing that, I'm not kidding, this is like crazy stuff. My mother's like psychic, you know. I break my arm and I'm in Florida. She calls me up. I have a vision that you're in cast, handcuffed, and in jail. What do you feel like, right? So I'm like, I am. She's like, I just want to make sure this was like connecting to you, right? So I knew this was an end of an era. It was coming about. I'm always working on other things. So I was also for 31 years and at that point I was probably around 20, about 24, 25 years photographing at Martha's Vineyard. I was renting a shack. We don't own a house. I want to make that clear. I couldn't even afford a toilet down there. But I was renting a shack down there for many years and going down with great loyalty. And some of my dear friends around us have come down to visit many a time, and Harold being one of my great subjects, by the way. And so I always had that to go back to. And so, but I didn't mention, because you can only do so much in these lectures, is that we did talk about junk being one of those outlets, right, on the island. But also, what all my subjects had to put up with me is that when my father was no longer communicating verbally and I was hugging him, I brought that to the beach with me. So working with this big, huge camera, if you go to my website, it's easy, put in Stephen DiRado, put in beach people, whatever, and you'll see these really very intimate photos of people on the beach. By the way, this is a clothing optional beach. It's been there for quadrillions of years. And I know thousands of people, mostly 55 and older, what they look like naked. And you first have to be rich to be naked on that beach, or they're going to go down year after year. So it's a very specific, educated social class that are on this beach. But I love them all dearly. And so when I would go to visit Dad, they were all like, how's your father doing? Yeah, that's so good. And I would look at them and I'm like, can I hug you? And this is like, I'm thinking of Dick Houseman, who was 94 years old. He says, of course you can hug me. And, you know, some of the different age groups that I'm with, can I hug you? And I'm like, it's about your father. He says, it has nothing to do with you. It's all about me. And me dealing with my own gremlins. And by hugging you, you give me some of that life back and that warmth back. And then I want to make a photo about that. And I would do things like say to you, let's not make a photo today. Let's just talk today. I work very slow. And we'll talk for 3 hours about your history, your life. I remembered everything about you from the previous year. You know, how did it go? Did you go to the Bahamas? You know, you mentioned about that pimple on you. Was it okay? Was it benign? And I care about you. And then I'll say, we're not making photos today. When I come back tomorrow, we don't say a word. Not a word. And we're going to hug. And then with absolute patience and quiet, I'll make a photo. And then we'll pick it up from there. So I brought what I learned in a nursing home back to not just the beach, but a lot of friends of mine. And you know, Harold has been hugged way too many times from me. But Harold, you would say, you always had an expression, would you call me Doc or something? Like you'd say, okay, Doc, what do you see today? Or I don't know, DiRado. You always say DiRado, right? You always, boss. You'd say, boss, what do you see today? And so you're on. Gordon's been photographed by me. Not so much Bill. Donna can't stand me, my wife. But there's a couple people in this room. My brother and sister, it's a different relationship. I still have a brother and sister relationship with them. Same with my mother. She's a very strong person in my life. You can see it in my photos, very central, solid. So there's an enormous amount of respect. There's not even an equalness between you and me. There's still an enormous amount of respect about that. And so the camera looks up at her. Here she is, right in front of me. So I idolize her and treat her as a mythic, something I won't know until many years down the road. But I'm just going to go with it right now. But most of my friends, Harold being one of them, is that he's a conduit, very easy, accessible conduit to say things that are very deep in my body and my spirit, that I can try things out with him and other friends like Harold. So as an artist, they're my palette. Different people take on different roles in the way that I function. It's very complex. You know, everything that I do is all connected. I'm the most misunderstood artist, I think, out there for the amount of different things that I do. Because everybody's trying to put me into some kind of category. And they don't realize that it's all one big category. It's all back to that window in the bedroom and looking up at the sky and wondering. So the stars are about that, life and living. And I mentioned that no matter how old you are, life is short, and getting it all in there in a very short period of time. And how does one as an artist capture all of that? It comes back central to the table, the round circle, and going around, bringing people together.